Good morning. Welcome to the Rope Report. We have a special edition of the Rope Report today. I am Katie from Visit V1SUT.com, and I am here today with a very special guest. I'm filling in for Jenny White and Michael Grand, your regular hosts, to bring you a really exclusive interview with a child advocate in Oklahoma who is fighting very hard at great personal expense to keep kids safe. I'd like to welcome Darrell Dougherty. Darrell, welcome to the program. How are you this morning?
No, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you here. Darrell, if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few words and bring people up to date about who you are.
Okay.
Tell me, make sure I don't make any mistakes here. Darrell, you are an Oklahoman and a family man. You operate a wrecker service in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you're a small business owner, correct?
I'm in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I do have multiple small businesses here. Yes, ma'am.
Stillwater, Oklahoma. Yes, in Payne County.
Yep.
Um, and Darrell, you've been involved in a pretty big battle involving the safety and security of your son. How old is your son now?
11 and a half.
11 and a half. And this has been going on essentially since he was born, slightly before. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. The legal portion of it probably didn't start till, a few months after he was born. But yes, the needing to protect him and myself and it's been a long, long battle.
It has, and it's definitely heated up lately. I'll go back and recap just a little. You and I spent some time together the other day, and you shared some of the details of the story. So back in because I want to get to the present, the last month in particular, because I think Oklahomans will be shocked about how the systems that are supposed to protect our children, our taxpayer dollars pay to protect our children, are coordinating and turning against you in this fight. So back in 2023, you married your then wife, and pretty quickly you all found out that you were expecting your son, correct?
2013. 2013. Yes, ma'am.
2013. So
Yep.
in 2013, and as you shared with me, we're not going to go into huge details about someone else's personal experience, but when your then wife became pregnant, the doctor advised that she go off some of the medications, so the psychotropic medications she was taking. And you shared that she said that those were for anxiety and possibly bipolar disorder. Is that correct?
Yes, and again, like my knowledge of that is very limited. The
Mhm.
DHS reports actually say she stated anxiety and depression. So again, I wasn't privy to that prior. It was disclosed to me at that time, and that's when I learned that there'd be a change in how he operated and how things looked for us.
And you were telling me that her doctors gave you some directives to be on the lookout for some things. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those are, for anybody who's expecting, women have a major burden to bear and it's hard on them. And you need to look out and be careful for those changes in emotions and care and physical and pre and post. I was with her and with the doctors when they just told me to keep a close eye out because we could run into some problems and we certainly did.
Okay. Um, and those problems included, like you said, things became less stable in the household. Moods actually, you experience domestic violence, which typically you've been an advocate for defining domestic violence as going in both directions between men and women. And then it sort of culminated in an event where you shared that she threw your son, who was an infant at the time, toward the headboard, and you were able to cushion that fall, luckily, so that he wasn't injured. And that's when things really started with this case. So you did not press charges at the time. There was some domestic violence going on. You were then became really concerned about the safety of your child, correct?
That's correct.
And what happened is things started to turn around. your wife actually went to a nonprofit organization for help in getting a restraining order from you to keep your child away from you. And the legal battle sort of started from there. You were advised to get a PPO against her, a personal protective order against her to protect your child. And then things moved from there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, how the legal process started?
Yeah. Yeah, after I told her we had to get back to a doctor and get her some help before she, hurt the kids or hurt me or hurt herself, she went and tried to get a restraining order against me. The Wings of Hope, which is a local domestic violence shelter here in town, ended up speaking with her, and then they spoke with me, and they actually recommended a protective order to keep her away from my son and I, to get us some protection while he was so young. Um, I actually, went to bat for her, thinking it was ideal that she would not be kept away from him, and asked for that to be changed into a supervised visit situation, where he could safely be around her. And that began a train wreck where I was considered to not be considering his safety. I must not be worried about it. A few years of very unstable situations, and then there was multiple referrals into the DHS hotline. Um, DHS was interviewing my child without law enforcement being involved. Um, they were falsifying records stating that he wasn't making any disclosures. The Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth ended up investigating DHS and determining that they were negligent in investigating and reporting. They didn't only not investigate, they didn't even write down the complaints my child was making, the inappropriate ways he was being treated, and the threats he was under, the danger he was in. They did not disclose to neighboring states that had similar issues with the same perpetrator who had similar social services investigations going on behalf of kids.
Because
That was,
there were more than your son involved here, correct? She had another child
yeah,
who was
there
older
were,
than your son, and his father had similar concerns.
yeah, and there was also another stepfather again, a third, and there were multiple children involved in those complaints as well. Yes.
Okay. So you pretty early, one thing I was struck about in reading the documentation on your case, you've always kept, no matter what the threat was, an understanding that your son needed to have some kind of relationship with his mother, which led you to drop the initial PPO, and try to work this out and try to get the right treatment in place and try to work this out.
Right.
So that really did strike me. And in those years, between 2014, when you did file for divorce, she was, according to you, sort of in and out of your child's life. She was out of state. She got married again. She left not just him, but another child for a while, came back. There was a lot of instability there. And then in 2016, 2018, you told me that you were actually paying her rent, trying to keep things as stable as possible, because in the divorce, which was finalized in 2016, despite all these risks that were going on with instability, they ended up giving a 50-50 custody decision. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the attitude sort of is in Oklahoma about dads and divorce?
Yeah. Matter of fact, we kept getting changed judges because judges were tired of it. She got vocally and physically aggressive towards a judge in Guthrie. But everyone just kept saying, hey, a 50-50 win, a 50-50 for a dad is a win. So let's just take it and move on. Um, they would say crazy things like, it would make a mom look bad if she got 50-50 custody. You should take it. And I'd say, I'm not trying to make her look bad. I'm just trying to do the best thing for my kid. And they would just continually say, you're not going to get better than 50-50 custody. So for a very long, drawn out, unstable, dangerous divorce case, I never even got to go present in court. um, it finally moved enough judges that judge just said, we got to get this closed out. Let's make this 50-50 and move on. And my attorney said, just do it. You're not going to get better than this.
Wow. What's that like to, so were you on a 1 week on, 1 week off as far as your custody of him?
Yes. Yep. It was every other week. Yep.
What is that like to turn your child over not knowing if things are stable in the other parenting home?
Interestingly enough, my son was so aware of his environment, especially in that home, that I knew how things were in that home by him. Um, if he saw her and he could look at her and he could hear her voice and he didn't have fear, he would reluctantly go, but he wouldn't fight. If she presented to him in a way he was uncomfortable, he would kick and scream. He would hit at her. He would cling to me. Uh, he knew better than anyone immediately how she presented, whether he felt safe or not. And I've become very acutely aware of what to watch for that too. But he could sense immediately his safety.
Well, and then in sort of around 2018, as he's getting old enough to really express what's going on, he disclosed to you some inappropriate touching, those kind of things, and the instability and sort of physical risks to him in the home. You actually went to an ECC, early childhood director, where he was, and talked that out, and you were told that you needed to report it or they would to DHS. Is that how DHS initially became involved?
That's correct. Yes, he had been making complaints for a while, and I tried to, carefully open that door of communication with his mom and say, hey, if these things are happening inside your family, let's make him stop. If he's not if he's not representing this well to me because he's very young, um, we just need to, both be on the same page. And she was very aggressive in her responses to me, so that made me believe that he probably was being subject to those issues he was complaining about. And then fortunately and unfortunately to this day, walked in on that happening. And that was why the director of the early child care program said I had to call DHS.
Okay. Um, Walk us through what happened from there, because the Seville Center, which is an organization that is contracted to do forensic interviewing with children who are reportedly reports of abuse come in on. And there's something called a multidisciplinary team that's supposed to kick in. Why don't you tell readers a little bit about what's supposed to happen and what actually happened in your case?
Okay, yeah. When DHS is informed there's possible abuse, the district attorney is responsible for having multidisciplinary teams in place to protect that child. That way, if an investigation takes place, the police do it. There's a chain of evidence, there's reporting that happens, so everybody knows what happened. If the child presents in bad health, then a doctor does that, and you get a doctor's report, and you have this documentation, you can follow that back. If the child needs to do a forensic interview or a counselor, that happens with professionals. And the district attorney is responsible to make sure those are in place and ready so that that child gets those services. If DHS doesn't have access to that or um, chooses not to access that, then if a DHS worker engages in a criminal investigation, that's not just, failing that child, that's actually a crime. If
It goes against statute, state statute.
Yeah, if a DHS worker tries to diagnose a child rather than let a doctor or a counselor do that, that's not only failing that child, that's a crime. And you think, well, most of the time they get it right. Well, the problem is even when they get it right, um, 3 years later, something else happens, and you have to go back and look at it, and you don't have the appropriate, chain of custody of evidence, appropriate chain of custody of documents and records, then you have no way to go back and show a pattern, and protect that child. And that's what the biggest issue happened in my case, and you see that happening in most cases. Um, there's these little clauses at the end of all the multidisciplinary statutes that say if the child is in imminent danger and a police officer is not available, then a DHS worker can still act on behalf of the child. Well, in my case, the child wasn't even interviewed for 2 weeks. So there was no trouble getting a police officer, but there was no police officer that came to do the investigation and watch the interview.
Right. And that is in forensic interviewing, that is standard protocol, that we're dealing with not only child safety, but we're dealing with potential crime. And
Right.
DHS doesn't arrest people. So you could have a child being forensically interviewed who'd been greatly molested by, say, another person in the home. And if a police officer's not there, then it's sort of in the hands of DHS to turn that over to law enforcement. And what we see more and more is that it doesn't happen.
Right. This happened actually multiple times in my case. Multiple times my child was interviewed. Um, One time he was even interviewed, while he was sitting on the lap of the person he was complaining about. Um, and then it get in this blame game. DHS would say, well, the police wouldn't come. And the police would say they didn't call us. But it doesn't matter. The child was let down. It's the district attorney's job to make sure those multidisciplinary teams are available. And so my case escalated because multiple multidisciplinary teams didn't want to be blamed, but they weren't involved. And by law, they're supposed to be involved.
You make a great point, and I wonder if people really understand this. That every county, every judicial district has a district attorney. So not some counties are covered, small counties are covered one district attorney to multiple counties, but those are the folks, and those are the elected folks that answer to the people, are supposed to answer to the people who are responsible for having these multidisciplinary teams available in any of these cases. That's so important because that is the person that will decide if prosecution happens or not in these child abuse and child sexual abuse cases. So I'm glad you said that. So let me say this: the Seville Center does their forensic interview. It's not meeting protocol for how those things typically go. They say, DHS says that they don't substantiate abuse, but they did put counseling services in place for your son to start to learn about what is appropriate touch and to learn to advocate for himself and defend himself, because he's going to continue to go back and forth within this situation. Well, the reports continue to come, which actually is a good sign that says that your son is able to advocate to safe people and say, these things are happening to me. I don't feel comfortable with this. So when that happens, you, as a lawful reporter, try to report that to DHS, and you're digging in and saying, that's a new report. And so you should be making a new report, and you're told to make a new report. But then that situation turned. Tell us a little about that.
Right. Yeah. No. I made one initial report, and I claimed that from day one.
Mhm.
And then I started complaining because it wasn't done properly. The multidisciplinary teams weren't brought in, and because they weren't, DHS failed my kid, which the OCCY, Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth, determined. Um, then my complaints were moving forward at the same time my child was continuing to complain. So it was still the same investigation. It was still the same time frame. But what DHS very clearly tried to do was get me to continue to call in on the hotline so that it would look like I was making all these frivolous calls. I was very aware that this is something they do. You see them do it in court quite a bit. There's probably a lot of families that'll be listening to this and seeing this. They did that to me. They said I called all these times, and I didn't. Well, I actually have the evidence that I didn't, because when the deputy director of the state of Oklahoma demanded that I call back in, or she would turn me in to be a obligated reporter didn't report, I audio recorded her. And then I refused to call into the hotline. I just sent an email so I could document what she was forcing me to do. Even so, they came to court and said I made a second call to the hotline, which is very much a lie. It's perjury. They put that in court. Another year later, um, that same deputy director, her staff, they had an internal email chain where they said, "Hey, let's cut and paste out of Darrell's previous email and make another call into the hotline. There will be a third call by Darrell to the hotline." What they weren't paying attention to was they included me in the email, so it got sent to me. And so I said, "Hey, you guys are putting fraudulent calls into the hotline on me again." They asked me to delete my own email. I said, "Absolutely not." Um, but through this time, my child's not getting protected, and then I'm having to protect myself because they're trying to discredit me and possibly get me a charge, so that they'll silence me so that I won't stand up for my kid. During this time, you'll see that I never went to the police. I never tried to get somebody in trouble. All these false accusations that they said I was attacking, his other custodial parent were completely false. I never even called the police department on her. There were times when I definitely should. I made a mistake early on in my son's life, and I have to admit that now. And the Wings of Hope actually called me out on that. And they're like, "Hey, when he's when you're in a domestic violence situation and he's in danger of being hurt, or somebody's driving a car at you, or there's literal physical punches and scratching and hitting and kicking going on, like you have to call the police." And I never did. So, I was taking it from both sides. They were trying to make me believe that I couldn't call in or I was making false calls. They're also trying to make me believe that I was calling in all the time. And they would come to court and commit perjury and do both of those against me. So I was constantly defending my reputation, which made it impossible to protect my kid.
So it's interesting. You're not the only person to say this to me, that in their case with DHS, when DHS wasn't operating under the law or doing what they are obligated to do, they will turn the situation around and try to make the parent or the reporter the problem. I think you need to be a little more direct. Who was the person that sent the email and accidentally copied you, instructing a staff member to make false reports to the Oklahoma Abuse and Neglect Hotline that looked like they were coming from you?
Deputy Director Amy Whitson over Child Protective Services under Oklahoma DHS had her assistant do that. I believe she CC'd 12 or 13 DHS staff members and then accidentally included me because she did it as a reply email.
What is so striking about that is they copied 13 staff members. This is not one or two people colluding behind the scenes to make it look like this particular father is the problem when he's trying to keep his child safe. It's a culture.
Yes, very clearly showed how the absolute highest level of DHS was colluding to do this. And by the way, this was actually during the time the OCCY was investigating them. And I have the emails that were between DHS and the OCCY, between the director, Dr. Shropshire at the time, and the deputy director, Amy Whitson, at the time. They know they're being investigated by OCCY. They know they've been determined to be negligent. They've been told by OCCY that they have to rectify the situation. Rather than rectify, they're retaliating. And there's no way around that. There's no questioning that. And that is a big part of why we are having to move to such, amazing, extraordinary measures as the grand jury petition we're working on.
Yes, and I want to, before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the overlap of agencies that just came on you. You actually were a city council member in Stillwater, correct? From 2009 to 2012.
Yeah.
There were some decisions about how funds were used with the police force, and you feel like you got on the wrong side of the Stillwater Police Department. I want to talk about OCCY. So I'm not sure people completely understand. There have been so many agencies, commissions, so-called oversight added to the state of Oklahoma government that we lose track. So the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth was formed in response to a class action lawsuit against Child Welfare Services, the Oklahoma Department of Human Services Child Welfare Services, some years ago. And they operated under a settlement, which was a multi-point plan called the Pinnacle Plan, because they found that there were all kinds of egregious things happening within DHS. In particular, there was more abuse. Kids were very likely to be abused within the system that taxpayers pay to protect vulnerable children. So that is who OCCY is supposed to be overseeing. This is another layer to make sure kids are safe in the system. And you have these folks coming down on you. Will you talk a little bit about OCCY, the report on your case, your son's case, and how you came to find out what was really happening there?
Yeah, and I do want to track this all together. As far as our police department, the vast majority of our officers are awesome. They've been great. Matter of fact, I've seen a bunch of them in the last couple of weeks. I wish I had enough, but they're amazing. Um, that decision on the funding of their department really, really hacked off maybe half a dozen of them. Unfortunately, that half a dozen have been taking shots at me ever since. Um, the rest of them, I think they realize it's just business and nobody else was getting raises. You know what I mean? Would they have liked to have a raise? Yes. Would I have liked to give them a raise? Yes, absolutely. But our police department as a whole, we have really good people that do really good things. Our police department, there's a couple that have taken some really hard shots at me. They've taken shots at my business. I've been physically assaulted. Um, they have actually refused to investigate on behalf of my child when the wrong person took the call at the police department. I do have a lawsuit in at the Oklahoma Supreme Court currently regarding that. Um, but then you get to Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth. The Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth writes this report, and it's a very clear report. There's no doubt about the report. It's succinct. It's clear. It notifies exactly the complaints that I had made, for the previous 2 years, and how DHS failed to properly investigate, to properly report, and even at times when my son was making complaints of sexual molestation, they didn't even write them down. Well, if you don't write them down, you certainly can't investigate them. And then you didn't notify law enforcement. As a matter of fact, they actually put in their reports there were no disclosures by the child. Well, the interesting part is the OCCY comes and meets with these employees and says, hey, this is where you did wrong and you have to rectify that. Several of the employees that they spoke with actually came to court and under oath committed perjury and said nobody had ever told them they didn't investigate appropriately. They said the child made no disclosures. And then one employee who actually got moved out of Child Protective Services during the time that he was assigned to my son came back to court, and he'd been notified by the OCCY, and he said there were multiple occasions when I was with the child when he made disclosures of inappropriate touching in the home. And that's when you realize Oklahoma DHS isn't afraid of their oversight. They'll come commit perjury even though they've been told. I believe I've shared with you some emails from the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth that show the very top levels of Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth met with the Oklahoma DHS employees, instructed them on how to appropriately investigate and rectify the situation. And those employees came to court and lied. One of the most disturbing things I've dealt with in this, take the last 3 weeks of my life out. After the OCCY met with Oklahoma DHS, the three top employees in Oklahoma County DHS invited me to Oklahoma City. They said they're going to have a safety meeting with me regarding my son and how we could get some of this fixed and move forward. When I got to the great big DHS building, I went in the waiting room. The director of Oklahoma County came and greeted me. We went to the elevator. And when we got on the elevator, she hit the B button and we went to the basement. We went to some sort of a utility room, and three DHS workers, three female workers, berated me And I recorded the whole thing. They didn't know it. They told me that they didn't have to listen to the OCCY. They told me because I reported them to the OCCY, they were going to lie about me in court. They did come to court and lie the exact lies they said on the audio I have. My son and other children were complaining of being threatened to have to eat ladles full of liquid soap. And you can very clearly hear the DHS workers say, we know that's what they were complaining of. There's no way I'm saying that in court. I'm going to say in court that he just had to have his mouth washed out with soap so that it'll minimize the abuse these kids were dealing with. They told me that a mother physically abusing a child during postpartum is not concerning to them, but what is concerning is that a father who is a male would report a woman of domestic violence while she's postpartum. I had all that on the audio recording. I was very scared to share that previously because I didn't know if I'd get a stigma about me. Because if these three women thought I was out of line and I didn't know how to handle that situation, what would the public think of me? But the reality was I was supposed to be protecting my kid and I wasn't because I was scared of what it would look like. And that was my mistake.
Well, there's a lot coming at you at the time. We've got a lot of really good comments here. Mark is saying that Darrell was making fiscally responsible calls during his tenure on the city council in Stillwater, but a few police and firemen started picking on him and his business as a result. So there are some folks that are clearly familiar with some of what you're going through. Dana Mooney also says OCCY needs reform, shouldn't have a soul on the board with ties to the very agency they're charged with overseeing. And we see this as we start to see the collusion in your case between OCCY and DHS. You cannot oversee them if you are protecting them. And as you said, there was a remedy to be able to fix what was wrong in your case, and they were not made to do it.
Correct.
We also have Lisa here saying, you didn't know, you should have reported those things. You were trying to protect your child and make his life the best that it can be. Let's catch up on some of these too. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for a government of any other kind. I appreciate those comments. And we have, thank you for advocating. Everybody needs to hear this from Sarah. So I just wanted to catch up on a few of those before we go on. So we've got the police department. They're not helping you much. The city attorney can't get the police department records on this case, felt that they were hiding the OCCY info. There was even a whistleblower that bravely came forward and gave you information from OCCY and walked away because what was happening was not within the law. And then I want to jump to, in 2021, you actually lost custody due to reports of you calling DHS and the police. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And tell me about the process that you had to go through to fight that.
I'm still fighting that, by the way. DHS said I was making multiple calls into the hotline, which at the time I didn't have all of the documents to prove they weren't. I only had a few. But then they were also, colluding their story with my son's mother that I was continually calling the police. Well, the problem was I never did call the police, and I probably should have on multiple occasions. She actually had a long routine of calling the police on me. She would call a welfare check-in or a keep the peace check-in in advance. And then when I would be picking up my kid from school, she would hit me in the back of the head and try to get me to retaliate where the police would see me retaliate at her. I never did, so there was never any reason to take action against me. She ran in and wildly, dangerously took him out of my mom's home and threw him in the seat, no car seat, when he was very small, was going to try and leave with him, threatened to run over me with the car. But every time before these happened, she called the police. There was a time where her brother threatened to come take my son away from me if I didn't let her have him back, but she was under protective order. while I was gone from the home. Her brother and mom came to the house in what it was very clear violation of the protective order on her behalf. They were going to abduct my child and take him. The police had to come and remove them from my house. But I was never the one that made any of these calls. So it's hard to be ready to refute stuff you don't know somebody's going to lie about. There's no way I could have imagined that, a law enforcement officer who'd been mad at me for 10 years, DHS workers who are mad at me because they got reported to OCCY, and my son's mom would collude to say that I was making false calls to the hotline and always calling the police when it was clearly her. So as soon as that decision was made, my attorney said, I don't do appeals. I was like, what do you mean you don't do appeals? A decision was just made to put my son in harm's way and you don't do appeals. She said, yeah, I don't do appeals. I said, okay, well, I'm not signing that document. She goes, you don't have to. I'm your attorney. I'm going to sign it so we can move forward. I said, no, we're not signing that document. We're not going to agree to that. It was procured by fraud. She said, well, I don't do appeals, so I'm signing it, and you're just going to have to file an appeal on your own behalf. So she did. She signed it against my will. I did not agree that my child should be put in that position. I immediately went to the police department, did an open records request so that I could show, who was calling, because it clearly wasn't me. The city of Stillwater, in defense of itself instead of my child, was concerned they would have liability. So they filed a protective order against me that would say I couldn't have open records in regards to the safety of my child, and I couldn't speak to my elected officials or appointed officials about the safety of my child. Well, that was clearly bogus, but that meant they wouldn't turn the records over, and I only had 10 days to file an appeal. So I had to file my appeal with my basically sworn statement that said I didn't make those calls. So the judge clearly denied it, and I took it to the Oklahoma Supreme Appeals Court, and I was still under protective order, so I still couldn't get him. Oh, the protective order, by the way, clearly I was totally comfortable going to court because it was an illegal protective order. I had notified the mayor and the city council members that, hey, I need this to protect my kid. I'm not coming after you. I need to protect my kid. And they made the decision that it was in the city's best interest to put my kid at liability risk instead of the city. And so they hired this attorney firm called Collins, Zorn and Wagner. Collins, Zorn and Wagner agreed, contacted this attorney out of out of Oklahoma City area. Her name was Rachel Bussett. And they got her to agree to a protective order on my behalf. Well, I never would have done that. Fortunately, I got some heads up from somebody at the courthouse the day before, and I called the Rachel Bussett law firm, and I said, hey, I need to speak with Rachel Bussett. It appears she's going to, take a protective order on my behalf, which I don't agree with. And they say, well, she doesn't have time to talk to you. We'll give you your email. So I emailed her and her assistant that they had no right to accept a protective order on my behalf. They could not enter my case if that's what they were going to do. I get to court the next morning, and the judge says, hey, there's no reason for you to be here. You've already agreed to your own protective order as witnessed by your own attorney. Says, not my attorney. She had no right to do that. Has she entered in my case? Nope. Well, then she can't legally accept my behalf. You agreed to it. He left it in place. That was Judge Kistler. He left that in place. So I was stuck with a protective order that says I can't have open records in regards to the safety of my child, and I can't speak with my elected or appointed officials about the safety of my child. So now I can't get the records I need to give the Oklahoma Supreme Court, the appeals court, what they need to see that that was obtained by fraud, and they put a child in harm's way in the expressed opposite wishes of the child.
So let's really back up and think about what this means. And we've seen a lot of the use of protective orders to keep people from exposing things about our government agencies here in Oklahoma. Reported on this before, but you're essentially put in a position where now you have a lawsuit where you were denied due process. You were denied discovery in your own suit to prove that you weren't the one calling the police. They were not going to give up those records. So we have multiple agencies colluding and using the judiciary, which the judiciary signed off on it. We have a judge here doing this, correct?
Correct.
To keep you as the citizen from seeing what the government's doing as you're trying to keep your kids safe, and they're falsely accusing you of being the one that's calling multiple times and being a nuisance. I'm not sure you can't make this up.
No, as a matter of fact, if you go look at my case, you'll see that Rachel Bussett actually sent a filing into the case that said, since I never entered this case, I don't have to ask for permission to withdraw from the case. She admitted she was never an attorney in the case, and the judge still wouldn't drop the protective order.
Goodness. Okay. Let me go slightly forward here, and can we now talk about there was a grand jury petition filed in Oklahoma County?
Yes, ma'am.
Because yours is clearly not the only case where someone's being run over by multiple agencies who refuse to be transparent in keeping kids safe. There were 5 other families, I believe, involved in this grand jury petition. Um, tell me what happened with that. So there were signatures collected for the grand jury. So this is essentially the citizens' right to go over these agencies' head and ask for an impaneling of a grand jury to look at these agencies, particularly DHS in this case. Those were turned into the courthouse. They were sent to the election board. The board sent them back to Judge Ogden. Is that correct?
Yeah, but prior to that, the judge has the authority and actually the obligation to order a grand jury on his own accord and notify OSBI on his own accord because of the Kelsey Briggs law when he knows that a child is in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Process to play out. We presented more than 1,000 pages of known current child abuse that were happening at the time to Judge Ogden's office. He actually shouted down the courier, the gentleman that was taking it in there, so he couldn't say out loud that it was a Kelsey Briggs notification. And he just kept yelling, "Get out of my office, get out of my office, don't leave anything in my office," so that he had this plausible deniability that he knew it was disclosure of child abuse records. Because if he had it, he'd be required by law to order the investigation on his own accord. Because that happened, that was extremely uncomfortable and scary, and you realize this is why kids can't get help. Chairman Justin Humphrey of the Criminal Justice and Corrections Committee actually emailed that through a certified email to Judge Ogden so that when Judge Ogden opened it, he would not be able to deny that he had evidence of child abuse. He opened it. He received over 1,000 pages of obvious child abuse, some of which has actually been confirmed since then, which means he was absolutely committing crimes against children, failing to report, derelict of his duty, no doubt about it. He chose not even to assign a judge to the case so that he could say nobody had the documents, so nobody had to disclose.
Am I correct in saying that by law he has 4 days to do so?
Well, in October is when we filed the grand jury petition. He was notified, he had copy, like everybody knew. He refused to return it in the 4 days by law. The district attorney out of Oklahoma County actually had to go visit him in his office and say, "What are you doing? It's been over a month." So right before 5 o'clock on the night before Thanksgiving, he approves it, doesn't tell anyone, doesn't notify anyone. We only have 45 days to collect signatures, and he does it in this like sneaky trick right before Thanksgiving, knowing that how in the world are you going to collect signatures through Thanksgiving and Christmas when nobody's around and everyone's busy and traveling, right?
Right.
Not to mention, he still hasn't assigned a judge. So since October, 10 months to date, he still has not assigned a judge. So during that 45 days, once everyone found out there was only so many days left, people worked very diligently to collect signatures. I don't know whether we have the signatures or not. Those signatures were turned over to the election board. Those signatures were turned back into the judge. The judge still hasn't assigned a judge over it. He never notified the petitioners of how many signatures were collected. He never, told law enforcement about the abuse he knew of. And to date, There's still a request for him to do an investigation if he'll assign a judge. To date, he still has an obligation to notify the public what happened with the signatures. He hasn't. No notifications have come back from him. So that's what happened with the Oklahoma County petition. You see, all these petitions, people are trying to circumvent the Constitution and the people's right because they don't want them poking in and around what's happening. I promise you.
Well, now, so I'm going to see if I can add this. Oh, maybe not. It's saying remove other media streams from the stage. Oh, I got to remove this one, and I can add this one. Okay. Fast forward. So that was a legitimate attempt by the citizenry to go over the agencies that are not performing their duties in our constitutionally protected way and petition a grand jury. Correct. Nevertheless, the process just got stonewalled. They can stop. They can protect the agencies. Now, here we are today. Tell me about Oklahomans for Children's Rights.
Oklahomans for Children's Rights is literally what it means. Any Oklahomans that believe children have these inherent human rights can be on our team. It's not a LLC. It's not an organization. It's not certified anywhere. It's just saying we have a right to come together as a public and protect our children. That's it. In the Payne County petition, the filers for that are actually former Senator Connie Johnson, current Representative Justin Humphreys, current Senator Randy Grellner, Dr. Randy Grellner, and current representative from our area, Trish Ranson, and myself.
So we have legislators who have come together to petition a grand jury, and this time is in Payne County. And this is some serious language that's happening now. So everyone knows signatures are being collected on this now. It says that the Oklahoma House Committee of Criminal Justice and Corrections held a hearing on August 29th of 2024 to discuss these crimes and heard evidence of dozens of children in Oklahoma being intentionally failed by the agencies. The committee voted as a majority, and the Honorable Chairman, Justin Humphrey, sent a request to the OSBI to investigate on behalf of these children. And then on March 14th of 2025, District Attorney Adam Painter requested a multi-county grand jury. There are individuals that are specifically named in this, and we've talked about, I got to be over here. We've talked about some of them. We're talking about the DHS, the former director and the current director, as well as some other folks there in human services at the Payne County level. The commission, Oklahoma, the OCCY isn't mentioned in this, the OSBI, the law firm you referred to, the Oklahoma County Court, the Payne County District Attorney's Office, Payne County Court, and 2 state House representatives, former Speaker of the House, Charles McCall, and current Speaker of the House, Kyle Hilbert, who have a role in this oversight to keep kids safe when these agencies are not doing it. There's also the Attorney General's office, the Deputy Attorney General is mentioned, and Chief Justice Dustin Rowe of the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Will you walk us through what you're talking about in this petition and why it is so incredibly important that the signatures are collected on this?
Yeah, absolutely. What we have here is the people that are supposed to protect children either are looking the other way when they're not, or they're actively engaged in stopping children from being protected. I will say, the most important component of this is the judicial process is supposed to be the backstop of our justice. It's supposed to be you come tell the truth, you present fact and law, you get an answer back. So the biggest issue in protecting our children is false information, fraud, perjury. If people had to come to court and answer for their actions, we wouldn't be here today. But because our court system doesn't define fraud and perjury as something that they should look into, we can never get appropriate remedy. The most disparaging rebuke of our court system came just this last year, I believe in February, when our United States Supreme Court said that our Oklahoma courts are not courts of fact and law because they don't require fraud and perjury to be removed from the court. And you couldn't say it any better than that. Sonia Sotomayor very clearly articulated that when our attorneys are intentionally putting fraud into the court and our judges are intentionally allowing them to do it, there's no way we're going to have justice in Oklahoma. And we used to think, oh, this is conspiracy theories. Somebody was, got treated wrong by the courts. I think everybody that's listening right now probably thinks, yep, our Supreme Court nailed it. Oklahoma courts are not courts of fact and law. If you look at my case currently, there's no doubt that it is not a court of fact and law. It is a court of retaliation. It is a court of racketeering. It is a court of
Oh, we lost you for a second, Darrell. It looks like Darrell's technology has gone down. So Darrell, if you can hear me, we can't hear or see you. It looks like you're having trouble connecting. If you have to drop off and reconnect, I will just add you back in if you have to go to a different Wi-Fi. But I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about this petition, and I want to get to some of the comments here while we're waiting for Darrell. So Jenny shared with us that Stephen Kistler, who Darrell just talked about, is the judge who presided over the rope case against Stillwater Public Schools, and Bryce Chafin, whose rights were stepped upon by that school district. He ruled for Stillwater Public Schools. We were also told later Kistler was pressured to quit because his rulings were so terrible. Let's see what else we have to say here. Just struck me. We are officially working under socialism with czarist commissioners, and we are the serfs. We need a constitutional republic, says Michelle. Thank you for that. So that's kind of catching us up on that. But if we're going to walk through this petition, and I'm waiting to see if Darrell pops back on for me, walking through the petition, it actually alleges the crimes by all of these folks, and they are not small crimes that have been committed. It talks about the Department of Human Services failing to report the abuse of children, falsifying and changing and destroying and withholding documents, intentionally committed fraud and perjury, as Darrell was talking about. Oh, there's Darrell. I'm going to add him back with us. There we go. Are you back with us, Darrell?
I'm back. I'm sorry about that.
I was going through some of the crimes that are listed here, and I'm just in the petition, the Payne County petition that you are currently collecting signatures on. Now, OCCY, I'm kind of to that point. At OCCY, it talks about how they collect public dollars to organize these multidisciplinary teams that are not happening as they should be, and the post-adjudication review board. So that's at the district level, where these DHS cases are reviewed, and they are supposed to be where we're catching these things, where we are not giving due process to these families. Can I step aside for a second and ask you about something, since we're talking about OCCY? In June of 2024, the director of OCCY was pretty upset that you were outing some of these things and requested a meeting with you. Can you tell us a little bit about that meeting and what the fallout was from that?
Annette Jacoby is her name. I had been asking for meetings with them for months, years. I'd been working in the governor's Fathers Forward initiative and asking for meetings. I'd been asking through state legislators, absolute refusal to meet with me. And then I finally get this, we should probably meet after I do a legislative study with the Criminal Justice and Corrections Committee. And her staff said, I need to meet. And I said, I'll come down, be wherever you want. They said, we'll come to Stillwater. Okay, great. I reserved a room at the library. She brought her entire administrative staff to meet with me. I got a little nervous, and because of that, I invited a few people to join me. One of them was Senator Prieto, who's on the Health and Human Services Committee in the Senate. Mandy Reed, who's a child advocate across the state. I had asked Justin Humphreys. He was unable to attend. During that meeting, She basically asked me what I wanted on behalf of, making corrective measures. And everything I said, she said absolutely not. I was tasked by the governor's, by the chairman of the Youth and Family Services Committee to try and redraft legislation that would say domestic violence isn't just when a man hits a woman, but it's if a woman hits a man. And if it's in front of a child, that's a felony. But also, as we start having, different types of relationships around our state, what if a mom hits a mom or a husband hits a husband? We don't have any documentation. We don't have any paperwork, legislation that says that's domestic violence. So I was tasked with trying to get that done through Dr. Shropshire. Annette Jacoby told me they would not work on that with me at all during that meeting. During that meeting, I asked her specifically if the OCCY, who knew of sexual battery and rape, molestation happening in the Tulsa Juvenile Detention Facility, would immediately let law enforcement into that facility. She said absolutely not. They don't like law enforcement coming in their facilities. Their staff know how to handle it better than law enforcement. I said, you're an attorney. You know that's not legal. Multidisciplinary statutes. You have to let law enforcement in there. Those kids deserve protection, and you know it's happening. She said they weren't going to let law enforcement in. Um, and then she said something that really scared me because it resonated in my case. And she was speaking for the whole state of Oklahoma. She said a child's privacy is as important as a child's safety. And that really resonated with me because my child's been raising his hand and asking for help since 2018. And the reason he hasn't been able to get any help while he's raising his hand is because the Child Protective Services, the multidisciplinary teams, the district attorney, DHS, the director of DHS, Dr. Shropshire, the deputy director, Amy Whitson, the director of the OCCY, are silencing my child so that he can't have his safety. And so it really resonated with me that she said those children that are being treated that way in that Tulsa juvenile detention facility, their privacy is more important than their safety. So we won't send in law enforcement.
This, you bring up such a good point. The privacy laws that protect anything that happened in these areas, including with DHS and child welfare cases, they are locked down. Only DHS can see those. Law enforcement can see those records when needed, but the protecting what they call the family's privacy has kept these agencies wholly unaccountable. And I can tell you the Lincoln Lockerman case that's going on, and that child is still in harm's way, and the agency will not act. I cannot, as media, you cannot have an open record request for those things. The family cannot have access to that.
No.
We've learned recently that the legislature, who is oversight for this agency, cannot request the file anymore. They have a new instruction to staff that was put in by the new director, and they have to go in under supervision and see those records in piecemeal as a constituent is coming to them complaining about a child having been taken from them by this agency. Those legislators cannot share even the piecemeal information with anyone. They have to sign off because this is protected private information. It's left these agencies completely unaccountable. Nothing can ever come out on them. That's what makes this grand jury so important. So you're meeting with OCCY and you're seeing what goes on behind the scenes, how these things are really handled in the rooms behind the public view. And this person said something to you and referenced your case, correct? This attorney?
Yeah, she actually, they made reference, what did I want? Was there something they could do for me? It almost felt like, hey, we'll protect your kid if you be quiet about all these other kids. And when I wouldn't take the bait, because man, would I have loved for my kid to be protected, it got really, really uncomfortable and nasty after that. Um, I think they're used to being able to step into one situation. Annette Jacoby called children who are abused and not protected by the system one-offs. She called my child a one-off. The fact that DHS didn't protect my kid, he was further harmed. OCCY knew it and notified him and didn't do anything. And so then he was further harmed again. She said he was a one-off. I can't tell you how disrespectful that is to a little boy who's begging for help when you are the top person responsible for oversight over child welfare. And not to mention, I don't know exactly what happened over the 2 days after the meeting with Annette Jacoby when we discussed the logs where we knew OCCY was going into Tulsa Juvenile Detention Facility. They knew the abuse was happening in the facility. She would not let law enforcement into the facility. 2 days later, because she wouldn't allow law enforcement into the facility, and Jeffrey Cartmel was the director over that facility at the time, it had to be raided by the federal government, who went in and found out, sure enough, sexual battery and molestation were happening in that facility. And because OCCY and Oklahoma DHS did not act, there were additional victims and further perpetration on these little kids in a home where they were completely defenseless.
You brought this up directly. She brought her entire administrative staff, high staff there, with her to this meeting, and they were making veiled offers to solve your problems if you would be quiet. And you instead stood up for the kids in the Tulsa juvenile facility. And we all know at the end of that scandal, kids were being raped by
Correct.
staff. Within days, Homeland Security stepped in, correct?
That's correct.
Um, so I find that incredibly shocking. So we have this petition out there now, and you're collecting signatures on this. We're at about an hour, so we probably have about 15 more minutes to talk about this. I want to talk about now. Well, first of all, how can people be involved in the petition? You have some dates coming up on the petition where they could get involved, help collect signatures. Is that correct?
We do. This is so important. I believe we have until September 10th. We don't trust the courts, so we're going to get it in early. We don't know how they're going to rule. The timeline on that is we need 3,542 signatures by state law. As you've seen in the other grand jury petitions around the state, you can't trust the state court. They fabricate the number required on that. So we want to get more than that. We don't want to chance that. We need people to come sign the petition. We need people to come pick up packets and go get signatures from their friends and family members. Even if you only know 5 people that want to sign, we want you to come pick up a packet. We'll teach you how to do it. It's very easy. It's very simple, and you get to help children while you do it. I mean, it can't be better than that. This weekend, we'll be collecting signatures at the Payne County Fair. It will not be hard. You'll see us there. We'll be everywhere. We'll be at some of the booths. You get a sign. And on Saturday, we're going to do a question and answer, a live stream question and answer at 2 o'clock from the listening room in Cushing. That will be across many sites. You can watch my Facebook. You can watch lots of different sites that will have that live streaming. We will be meeting at churches and businesses over the next 2 weeks to get signatures. And then I believe on the 6th, we're going to have a drive and sign event. We're going to have places in Cushing and Stillwater where you don't even have to get out of your car. You pull up, you're going to have somebody come to your window. You can ask them any questions you want. You can see anything on the petition you want. You can ask any questions you want. And then you can sign to help protect these kids. And we can come together as a community and get this done. I will tell you that the forces that will be don't want this to happen. It's been obvious in the big cities that the pressure mounts. It's nice to see in our city of Stillwater that everyone sees this as the plus. Both, libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, we're all on the same page. Doctors, nurses, lawyers. Lawyers are signing our petition. They see how important it is. Let me tell you something. If lawyers are signing your petition, you need to know it needs to be happening because they don't sign anything. We have educators, we have caregivers, counselors. Everyone's signing this petition. We need a lot more than we think we need just to make sure that nobody can circumvent this process. So I own a business that right smack dab downtown, 6th and Main, Stillwater, 524 South Main. Come see me. I'd love for you to sign a petition with me. I'd love to send a petition with you to get it signed. Couldn't be more important. Unfortunately, my worlds have collided big time right now because this is the moment I've been working on since 2004, probably, to try and get corrective measures. And right now, I have a judge clearly retaliating against me because he's on the petition with zero consideration for the safety of my child and other children. He is taking very aggressive, illegal action against me in court. He is trying to have me arrested, fined, sanctioned, seize my assets. Very clearly, there's no doubt. It's very clearly because he's listed on the petition. And
Well, let's
the
walk through, because this is what definitely wanted to get to. Let me
okay,
tell listeners that they're asking you to make public posts on your Facebook page because people want to be involved to force this multi-county grand jury to happen, to rein in these agencies and these officials. Also, we'll make sure that we get those things. If you provide it, Darrell, after, we'll just do a bullet points and we'll get it up on Rope Report social media and Visit social media so that people know everywhere they can be involved. But now I would like to move on to, here you are pushing back against the agencies, and the last 3 weeks in your family life have been walking hell. Would you walk us through what has happened since you've been part of filing this petition as part of this group?
I can. It's gonna be hard and maybe a little emotional. My son has been in an extremely scared position. He is afraid that his mother is going to take him and run with him. He's afraid he's never going to see any of his family or friends again. He's even afraid that his mother's family has been completely cut off from him. They were secret. He was secreted and hidden even from them. Um, I notified law enforcement in the courts that if I could get him, I would keep him. He was in distress, and so I wouldn't turn him over. I notified his mom. I said, "Look, he's going to stay with me till we get this settled." I had a couple weeks of custody, vacation time, summertime anyway. I notified the courts, "Hey, let's have a hearing. Let's get this settled. Let's give this boy some peace." The judge that has jurisdiction over my case would not give me a hearing. Absolutely will not give me a hearing. And then this judge, Judge Nikki Leach, who had oversight over my case for a while, um, he had my son into private chambers. And if a child discloses something that is whimsical or impossible, the judge can't take their opinion. So when my son went into private chambers, he asked my son, "Hey, don't you just wish your mom and dad would get remarried so you could live with them both together?" Well, if my son would have said yes, that would clearly be whimsical and impossible because we ain't getting back together. I have the most amazing wife in the world. My son has three amazing little brothers. That would never happen. That can't happen. It won't happen. My son said, maybe that would have been nice out the gate because, if they could have stayed together. But what I really just want is more time with my dad. The judge came out of closed chambers and told the court that he couldn't trust my son, even though he was a nice kid. He couldn't articulate for himself. So my son just wanted his mom and dad to get remarried so they could live happily ever after. So my son's voice was silenced again by perjury by a judge. So I asked that this judge be disqualified from the case. Once I formally requested that, he cannot proceed in any way, shape, or form in the case. Um, since he's been listed on the petition, he has filed to have me arrested. He has filed a writ of habeas corpus to come have my kid taken out of my home and put in the home with the person he's afraid of. While that has happened, he has told multiple police officers he's not safe in that home. He's not big enough to protect himself. While he's worried about himself, he's more worried about his little sister. He has said, "I can't protect my 2-year-old little sister. You can't put us back there." Um, he has received threatening messages that say, you need to quit talking to law enforcement because your sister is going to be put in the system. Things are going to get ugly. I'm going to make sure your dad is in trouble with the police. Things that make him extremely scared now. He always wanted to be a police officer, and police officers are great. Most of the police officers we've dealt with have been great at keeping the peace and keeping it calm. They understand that I'm not going to make him turn over if he is in distress. He has very clearly had the opportunity to go anytime he wants. He will not go. He is not going to go. But I am scheduled tomorrow to be in court. I was not served in a timely manner. The accusation.
Darrell, can I back up just one
Yeah.
second? Because it's
Yes.
important before people hear what's happening right now. There was an
Mhm.
actual standoff, several hour standoff at your home, correct?
That's correct. Yes, there's been several actually over the last couple of weeks.
Which
And at the school, back at my home, back at the school again, my child
police
demanding,
involved events
mm,
where
yes,
your son's voice has been silenced, even though they've talked to him and they know his concerns.
yes.
And then another thing before you move forward to what's happening tomorrow, uh, a judge was taken off of your case, but reached back into your case to put in this order.
Well,
Can
he's
you
technically
describe?
not. He's technically not, well. I don't know whether he's technically been removed from the case or not. The judge that would make that decision is Judge Canavan of the North Central Judicial Administrative District. Once Judge Leach was formally requested for disqualification, he cannot proceed. It's not legal for him to proceed. Judge Canavan reached out to Judge Bandy out of Newkirk and asked him, assigned him to take the case. At that point, I assumed, disqualification was not only pending, so he can't proceed, it was finished. Judge Bandy's bailiff told me that Judge Canavan had contacted them and he'd be taking the case. So I was waiting on emergency temporary orders so we could get my son some safety.
Okay, and to
And
clarify, you requested, because of your history with this judge and the lack of any ability to be impartial,
he
that this
lied about my
be
son's testimony.
removed.
Yeah,
And there's a process for that. Once that happens, we have to wait for the higher judge to make that decision.
correct.
And you assumed that this was moving to another judge.
Well, yes. So I knew he couldn't proceed, but then I was told by Judge Canavan's office that it went to Judge Bandy's office. I contacted
Okay.
Judge Bandy's office, and the bailiff assured me that yes, he hadn't been requested to take over this case.
Okay.
2 days later, Judge Bandy notified Judge Canavan he was uncomfortable with it because of his conflicts. Well, his conflicts aren't with me. His conflicts would be with Judge Leach. So now we're waiting on Judge Canavan to choose another judge. Having said that, Judge Leach cannot proceed in this case. The law requires me to still have access to the courts. Original jurisdiction lies in Payne County.
Okay.
Judge Jason Reese is responsible. He is bound by his oath to provide timely access to the courts. When he's been presented with the Constitution and state law, his answer as to why he won't allow me into court to have a hearing like most other people get on a regular basis is that he talked to some of his other friends who were judges and they determined that he should just wait and not do it. Um, it's a direct violation of his oath of office. It's dereliction of his duty. I will be notifying him of that again today. Justin Humphrey has notified him of that. We have multiple emergency protective orders that have been denied or are currently pending, and Judge Reese is just letting those sit there when they're required to be responded to in 24 hours. And so my son's fear cannot be alleviated.
So,
And
so you have you your son has verbalized that he's at risk of harm.
he
You
actually
have
emailed
gone.
the police
Go ahead.
department himself. I didn't know he was supposed to be sending pictures of threats that he'd received to the police department. In addition to those pictures, him and a friend notified the police department that he was not safe himself. And I do have those now.
And you've gone above and beyond to notify the court that you've requested this hearing that was supposed to happen within 24 hours, which has not, and that you're not running away with him, you're not stealing him, you're keeping safe until the court can weigh in. You
Right.
also notified the Stillwater Police Department in writing, and you are a very good documenter as far as the steps that you've taken.
I
And
am.
yet, still, you've had standoffs at your house and you have a hearing tomorrow. Is that correct?
That's correct. One more side note. There's actually a request for an emergency protective order in the grand jury case that is just being ignored. Like it doesn't even sit there. Then, the public, Justin Humphrey filed it on behalf of Oklahomans for Children's Rights. It's completely ignored. It's required to be responded to in 24 hours. It's not even being looked at. And so this is escalating. And I will tell you, this is hurting not just me, not just my son and my family. This is hurting the respondent's family because they're not getting due process either. But yes, Judge Leach on Monday, knowing it would be impossible to give me 72 hours of notice, filed for a hearing of a very, I'm supposed to show up for an arraignment of a very aggressive charge against me, knowing he couldn't give me 72 hours notice. He signed that to force me to be there on Thursday, and I didn't get served with it till yesterday late morning, which means I didn't even get 48 hours notice. This has to be quashed immediately. I can't believe the superior judge, when Judge Leach comes into Payne County and is over Payne County case, he's an associate judge. The district judge, Jason Reese, is clearly over him, clearly is mandated not only to quash this, but also to notify the Judicial Review Board and the law enforcement of the crimes this judge is committing. And he's not. The buddy system among the judges, they just won't do anything. I'm here with you because this is pending disaster for my family, and there is no legal recourse because nobody's following the Constitution.
So you could be arrested tomorrow for keeping your son safe.
I honestly don't know. I can't be legally arrested tomorrow. No. If I'm arrested tomorrow, it will be a very illegal situation. I will tell you.
We've seen a lot of illegal things go on, and when we're talking about your particular case, we're talking about this grand jury petition, which I want to get back. People have some specific questions about. We're talking about a sitting committee chair in our state House of Representatives. His motion is being ignored.
Yes, oh, completely. Yes, not just ignored.
That's all
it's been
outside of law.
Up. Yes.
So really anything could happen. Our prayers are with your family, and through it all, you've continued to stick up for in this process, not just your own child and your own family, but you had an opportunity to make this go away and to play the dirty game, and you did not. You stuck up for kids the most vulnerable kids in Tulsa in their juvenile facility, and you outed some really heinous behavior going on. So, everyone needs to have their prayers and support behind you. I want to show a couple of comments. People are really interested in this grand jury petition in Payne County. Robert Scott is asking, is this just Payne County or is this statewide?
This one's just Payne County. We will be pushing this statewide. If you don't live in Payne County, please call everyone you know that you know in Payne County and have them come sign and help gather signatures for this petition. We're down to just a couple weeks.
Excellent question. Also, please explain the petition is only in person. Can you talk about what you have to do to sign on to this?
You have to be a registered Payne County voter. You have to print your name, sign your name. We're having people date it just to be on the safe side, and then you have to print your address where your voter registration is noted so that they can cross that with the election board in Payne County when we turn these in.
Okay, and we are going to. This will be up on our social media. This will be up on Ropes, and this will be up on Darrell Dougherty's social media. People are saying share this far and wide, and they're clearly seeing the corruption inside our state government that is very self-protective from agency to agency.
My social media, hundreds of other social media people out of Payne County, Stillwater community page, which has tens of thousands of people on it, and the Stillwater community page, which has tens of thousands of people on it, all have the information available on the social media sites. Again, I'm people kind of look at me. I'm not a one-man show. There are hundreds of people collecting signatures right now, but we do not trust that the system will allow the number that we believe is right. So we need everyone to come sign, and we need people to go get signatures for us.
Well, Lisa wants you to know, how is it legal to give someone less than 48 hours on a court hearing? How are they getting away with it? These are not things that are negotiables. This is the law.
Well, I got an email even yesterday from Judge Reese that said he won't intervene. So I will be filing in court today that is probably going to be a little more forthright and transparent than any of these judges want to be on paper and want to be in the public. So I'm not sure they will allow it on OSCN. I will make sure that I have a file stamped copy of that and make it public. It will very clearly define what's happening today. So if something happens tomorrow, I'm meeting, I have a meeting scheduled with a couple of attorneys today so that if I need my family to be protected, that will happen immediately. But it won't stop the damage from happening. But again, I'm not a one man show. This damage is happening to families like mine all over the state, all over Payne County, all over Stillwater, Cushing, Yale, Perkins, Glencoe, our rural communities. This stuff is happening. People don't stand up and say something exactly because of what's going to happen to me tomorrow.
And you have, I hope people know that Darrell and his family have paid an incredible price. Also, financially, there have been much of this fight throughout the last decade plus that he has gone pro se, where he's representing himself and doing just an amazing job of writing and entering these motions to really stand up for everyone. Mark's got the link here. If you're interested in going, you can go straight to OSCN on that grand jury petition. It is GJ 2025-1 in Payne County to learn more about the grand jury petition. And as a note of encouragement, Darrell, our prayers are with you for tomorrow. But also happening tomorrow, there is a committee interim study, and Representative Gabe Woolley, who's also been a huge warrior in this fight to keep kids safe and to rein in DHS, has an interim study on two different bills that he's putting forward to rein in the child welfare system and to put much higher standards on legal standards on what they can and cannot do to Oklahoma families.
I'm
Darrell,
scheduled, I'm scheduled to present at that.
okay, good.
If I'm not there, please tell him I'm trying to get out, and I will help when I'm freed up.
I will do that. I will carry that message. Anything else that you feel like people should know, Darrell? You're really fighting the good fight. God's
Your voice is important. Your kid's voice is important. Don't ever let anybody silence a child's voice. We got to learn to stand up. I didn't know how to stand up appropriately 10 years ago. I'm doing a better job now, but we all need to work to do that together.
Darrell, thank you so much for your time and for everyone here and all of the great comments. We'll get that out on social media so you can all be involved in this grand jury petition. Thanks, and we will see you Friday. Michael will be back. Michael's going to talk money with us, economy, money, what's going on at the Fed, and how it affects Oklahoma. So come back, and we will see you 9 a.m. on Friday. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, let me make sure that nope, I think that's off. Okay, I am going to end this, and I'll give you a quick call.